The mail processing script has now validated all the form input, so we're ready to build the body of the email message, which must be a single string. Forms often contain a large number of fields, so I plan to automate the process. But for this to work, the form fields must have meaningful name attributes because they'll be used as labels in the email body. So let's just check. Name, email, and comment. So the names in our form are all fine. If you want to use multiple words in a field name, join them with an underscore. Don't use spaces or a hyphen. Let's continue with the mail processing script. So switch to process_mail.php, and at the beginning I want to create a variable that will indicate whether the mail has been sent. So call it mail sent, and it hasn't been sent yet, so it's false. Then the rest of the script needs to go down at the bottom, following on from where we left off at the end of the previous video. So create a new line after creating the headers on line 50, and we need to make sure that we're properly indented. And we'll continue to comment the script. So we're going to initialize the message. And that will be a variable called message, which is simply an empty string at the moment. And we will then concatenate everything on inside a loop. And the message should contain only values from fields that are listed in the expected array. That will prevent the script from including any spurious values that might have been injected by an attacker. So we need a for each loop that goes through the expected array, and we'll call each element field. And then we'll have the end for each straight away so we know where we're working, and just tidy up the indentation. Indentation is extremely important when you're working with complex script like this because it tells you the logic of your script. So inside there we need to handle the value that has been submitted in each form field, and I'm going to assign it to a temporary variable called val. And ideally what I'd like to do the first time it runs is to have name, and the second time that it runs I'd like this to be email. Now the problem is that we can't do this with literal text, with literal variables, but what we can do is to use a variable variable. If you remember, earlier in this chapter we used variables in this loop that you can see up here, and on line 33 and line 35 we're using a variable. It begins with $2 instead of 1. And what this does is it creates a new variable based on the name of the variable that is used as the variable. So what happened here was we were using the key from the post array, and each time that we ran through it, post name became simply name, post email became email, and so on. So down here in this for each loop we can use field as a variable. So if we make that $2 field, the first time that this loop runs, field will be name. So it will contain the value that is in the name input field, and we're then assigning that to val so we can work with it. But we need to make sure that the field isn't empty, so we need a conditional statement here. So if, then we'll use the isSet function, and we'll pass it our variable field, and check not empty, again passing it the variable, so $2 in front of field, and then put the closing curly brace down there. But if the field is empty, we need an else block, and in there we'll assign to val a string not selected. So as this loop runs, val will contain either the value stored in a particular input field or the string not selected. At the moment the form contains only text input fields and a text area, but some form elements submit their values as an array, so we need to check if val is an array. So after that conditional statement we'll add another comment. We need to use a conditional statement and the isArray function. We pass it val, and if it is an array we reassign to val the result of using the implode function, which will join together all the elements in an array as a single string. And the first argument to it is what you want between each array element. So we're having a comma separated string, so it'll be a comma and a space. Then the second argument is the array that you want to join, so that is val. The next step is to remove any underscores from the field name and replace them with spaces, because we're going to use that as the label in the message. So this time we're working with field. We're not using the variable, we're using the actual value that's in field. In other words, the name of the input element that is coming from the expected array. So we're going to reassign to field the result of string replace, and the first argument to string replace is what we're looking for to replace. That's an underscore. The second argument is what we want to replace it with, which is a space. So we need a pair of quotes with a space between them. And the last argument is the string that we are trying to replace in. So that is field. And finally, we can build the message body using the combined concatenation operator, which will add the current label and the current value to the message variable that we created at the start. So message, then the combined concatenation operator. We'll pass the label to UC first, so that is field that we're passing there. So this will give us the name of the field with an uppercase first letter. We concatenate onto that a double quoted string beginning with a colon, a space, then val, in other words the value stored in that field, and then \r, \n, \r, \n. And these are escape sequences, so that will add a carriage return and new line character, a couple of them, at the end of each value. So that is automatically building the body of the email message. Doesn't matter how many fields we've got, it will automatically create it with the labels and the values. But when sending an email, each line should be a maximum of 70 characters. So we can use the PHP word wrap function to deal with that. Needs to go outside of the for each loop, but inside our conditional statement. So what we need here is to reassign message, and it's word wrap, and the first argument to word wrap is the string that you want to wrap, which is message. The second argument is the maximum number of characters in each line, which is 70. And at the beginning we created mail sent as false. Now we're going to assume that the mail has been sent, so we'll reset mail sent to true. So that completes that script in there. To test it, let's go back to contact.php, scroll down to the bottom, and just before the closing body tag, insert a couple of HTML pre-tags. This will nicely format everything for us, and then inside there we'll have a PHP block, and then inside there we'll display the results of submitting the form. So if post, so if the form has been submitted, and mail sent, we'll then display the message and the headers. We need to use HTML entities when displaying the values, so that'll be message that we're passing to that. And we also want to display the headers, so we make sure that they're correct. And the headers also need to be passed to HTML entities. So if we save all of that and then load this into a browser, we can test it. Insert my name, an email address, and some comments. And if we click send comments, down below we get the message. So the name of each input field has been used as the label, and the beginning is uppercase. So name, David, email, comments, everything is working fine, and then these are the headers that have been created. So although this solution involved more code than concatenating the 3 input fields manually, it'll be a great time saver with a more complex form. Because it uses generic code, the mail processing script can be used with any form, and it will build the body of the message automatically, as long as you give input fields meaningful names and separate multiple words with an underscore. You can't use a hyphen because the script relies on the use of variable variables, and hyphens are invalid in variable names. We're now ready to send the email. We'll do that next.